Hey, Shalom, Shalom, Shalom. First and foremost, call Halal Yahweh, Shem Yahweh Shai, Shem Dash, and of course, double honors go out to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who, through the Holy Spirit, continue to teach us. All right, there's truth, and we come out here on the highways and byways to impart, of course, through the Holy Spirit, the wisdom and knowledge of the Scriptures. All right. Trying to wake the remaining, hopefully elect up because time grows short. I'm here at the top of the MLK Library in Washington, D.C. It's beautiful weather today after 2 or so days of bleak weather, which, hey, that's foreshadowing of days to come. All right. As far as this country goes, this is as good as it gets. All right, this is Naaman with the DC camp. And yeah, I just thought I'd show everyone this. Real serene and peaceful up here. Thought I'd do a video. All right, so back to my topic of today. I was watching Gerald Celente, and he's been putting it in the last few episodes here. Right here, he's in talking to a Judge Napolitano, and they're going in on what's happening, and these stupid Americans, how they're being deceived, and they don't even realize it. All right, and him being a judge, he's explaining. Well, I'll put it this way: your precious Constitution, you might as well ball it up or use it as toilet paper. All right, these elites have an agenda, and they don't care about what's written on a piece of paper. George W. Bush told you that when he was president. All right, he said it's just a piece of paper. All right, so things are drastically changing, and it's only going to get worse. So I don't know, you idiots that took that jibber jabber. All right, you're done. How stupid can you be? And he's going to go into that too. All right, so let's go ahead and roll this beautiful footage.
Hey, hello. This is Gerald Celente, and boy, what a day today is. A day that will be remembered in history, yep. C-N-A-N-D-N, Celente and Judge Napolitano. Yeah, and this is the honest truth, the truth, not the CNN fake stuff, but this is CNN, Celente and Napolitano. Napolitano, I gotta say Napolitano because Napolitano is Napolitano. And this is the truth, the honest truth, because all we're being fed are streams of lies, moronic nonsense. Like when you look at CNN, the headlines, a guy and his wife got thrown out of a restaurant because they were wearing masks. That was the front page of CNN. And the other one about this young lady that's missing. You know, it's terrible that she's missing, but 21,000 murders last year in the United States, according to Fox. Why am I hearing this as the one story? So what we're doing is we're giving you the information, the facts, and the data that are important to our lives that CNN, the Cartoon News Network, is keeping quiet while they're selling fear and hysteria, and CNN is the honest truth. Judge Napolitano.
Gerald, it's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for that introduction. Your observations about this young girl who now has been found dead show the power of the media. The country fixated on one missing person out of 90,000 missing Americans every year, because the media just decided this was the most titillating one, and it dominated the news for 10 days, and it probably will continue to dominate until they find her fiance, whether he's involved in her death or not. Once they find him, then it'll go below the radar. But shows their power.
Yeah, I'll tell you when it began to decline. I was being interviewed by, remember 48 Hours on CBS?
Sure.
Yeah. they came up when I was in Rhinebeck, and they were doing a show with me. And I said to the woman, and she was I forgot her name, but she was really, really sharp reporter, journalist, a real journalist. And I said, why are they covering this, who's that guy, that football guy, who's in the news all the time? Who was it? Just drew a blank. I know his face. What was his name?
O.J. Simpson?
O.J. Simpson. That's when it began to go down. What the hell do O.J. Simpson, O.J. Simpson, O.J. Simpson. That was the beginning of the death of it.
You know, I'm laughing because, and I know this is not what we planned on talking about, I almost owe my 25-year television career to O.J. Simpson, because Roger Ailes, when he was the head of CNBC, hired me expressly to analyze that trial. And I did it 5 days a week for 13 months.
All right, I got to tell you. Funny. Yeah. So on the important notes that we're talking, again, this is very important because, you know, CNN, again, we wrote about it in the Trends Journal back in February of 2020. That little clown boy running the show over there, Zucker, or maybe you take that Z out and throw an F in there. This is the guy that told his staff to keep going on with the coronavirus because their ratings were going up. Their ratings were in the toilet. They had hardly anybody tuning in before that.
And the reason, Salakia, but the reason they're doing this is a distraction. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on however you look at it, a lot of people fall for it. And like I say, it's distracting from the real issues. You know, right hand, left hand, and everybody's focused, which was the intent, on this magic virus, all right, that acts like no other virus in the history of man. And they've used fear-mongering to get the idiots to take this experimental gene therapy, all right? And now you're a product. People have scanned themselves and it comes up with a number. They put that luciferase in there, that blood of a horseshoe crab. So now, when you get under a black light, the spot where you were injected and your veins, they glow. How stupid can you be? For the people that had a brain that said, wait a minute, something's not right, especially our people. Now we're being demonized because we were able to think. All right, so they're starting to play both sides against each other. And the dumbass so-called brave Americans, they're just falling for this shit, hook, line, and sinker. Now over there in Europe, they got some cojones. They're out there protesting. And what's going on in Australia should be telling you something, that there's more going on here than meets the eye. Pulling people out of their cars and shit because they don't have the jibber jabber. All right. I mean, telling people they sipping tea on their front porch to go back in the house. I mean, all kinds of shit. But you're not getting that news here because you're dumb enough to look at ABC, NBC, and CBS and all these other local. And you can tell, what was it, Conan O'Brien some years ago? He proved that they all like reading from the same script. He would play news broadcasts from like Seattle, Virginia, Florida, Texas, Minnesota, whatever have you, California, and they'd all start out with the same reason. I mean, it's pathetic, all right? But people fucking fall for it. This place is a joke, and it needs to go down. I'm glad that it's going down. Our people have suffered, you know, and you're never going to get a fair shake here, all right? All right? This is all about Israel, the real Israel, all right? And things are happening now. And there's no, like it says in Jeremiah 10th chapter, there's no fearing what you see in the skies. You know, that's what the heathen do. This is our salvation. You know, Zechariah 5th chapter. That's why you're seeing a lot of chariots in the sky. So don't be dismayed, all right? You know, our people in the fields sang Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. There were no airplanes back then. So what were they? Exactly. So this is for us, not anybody else. The Bible is our book, no one else's. So why are people so quick to give it to somebody else? Because of the lies that have been told. All right? Everybody wants what is yours. And the insane part about that, you want to give it away. Fuck these other nations. That's what they say to us. Psalms 83rd chapter. All right? Everybody's confederate in keeping us from becoming a nation again. They come over here and prosper, all right, and make it off of our blood, sweat, and tears. Aren't you tired of that? And guess who's at the head of it? That's right, the so-called Jew. They're Edomites, self-proclaimed white people. There's nobody white, there's nobody black. That didn't come about until the late 1600s. All right, they're red. All right, the blood shows through that translucent skin. That's a curse. All right, Numbers 12th chapter, Leviticus 13th chapter, it goes into that. And Genesis, don't forget, Genesis 4th chapter. All right. So these are the things that are going on. And if you're not paying attention, well, first of all, the Spirit has to be on you. All right. You're seeing the things. You're seeing this devil's rulership, all right, being brought to an end. And it's a glorious thing. This is something you should be celebrating. All right. Not wishing for your torment to continue. Because like I said, the longer this devil is going to be over us, the worse that it will get. We've got towns that after the so-called emancipation, and when you understand what emancipation means, we were never freed. All right, it was just a transference. We went from being slaves under private ownership to becoming wards of the government. That's all it is. That's why they can do the things to us and get away with it. All right. And then shortly thereafter, the prison industrial complex. All right. You had to get that free labor from somewhere, the 13th Amendment. All right. And all these other so-called amendments thereafter. But it's just token gestures. They're never going to restore us. Just keep us prisoners of hope. All right, let's go back to the video.
And they did, and they kept selling fear and hysteria. And the fear and hysteria keeps being sold, and of course now the government is in full control.
Did you see
of
that?
Selling the fear
you hear that?
and hysteria.
Fear and hysteria.
And you wrote an article yesterday that has been put out about what Biden has done in his mandates of telling corporations, private enterprises, that if you got 100 employees or more, they got to get faxed so they can't go to work. Is this America?
Well, the first problem is in America, we have a constitution. And the Constitution has been interpreted by the Supreme Court to say we control what goes in our bodies. Just as a sick and dying person can refuse medication, a healthy person can decline medication, particularly an experimental vaccine, which is basically what this is. But the president, who is scrambling for some sort of a success, he's had a foreign policy disaster. His own party is fighting amongst themselves in the Congress. He's scrambling for a domestic success, has decided, since the Congress won't enact legislation forcing us to be vaccinated because there's no political will for that in the Congress, and they don't have the authority to do it anyway, he'll do it. And so he issued a regulation, told the Department of Labor to tell every employer, you're quite correct, Gerald, who employs more than 100 people, if your people aren't vaccinated, we will fine you. There'll be no trial. We're the judge and jury. We will fine you $14,000 a day per unvaccinated employee. So can the government force private enterprise to enforce its own regulations when the president writes the regulations, not the Congress? The short answer to that is no, which is why the regulations were announced by the president 2.5 weeks ago. Gerald, they have yet to be written and they've yet to be promulgated because lawyers in the DOJ are probably telling lawyers in the White House, you can't do this. So we're waiting to see what these regulations say. When the president announced them, he said, this is not about civil liberties or personal freedom. It sure as heck is when the government wants to force vaccinate you against your will.
You know, you also mentioned about the 13th Amendment, and it prohibits involuntary servitude.
It doesn't prohibit voluntary servitude. And when we voluntarily comply with these unconstitutional, immoral mandates of the government, like you shall enforce our regulation, you shall intrude onto your employees' privacy, you shall force your employees to get vaccinated, that is forcing a private employer, say a mom and pop organization that employs more than 100 people, to work for the government against its will and without compensation. Now, what do you call that when the government forces you to work for it against your will and without compensation? Slavery.
Slavery.
And slavery, they call it involuntary servitude because they didn't want to use the word slavery in the Constitution. Slavery is prohibited by the 13th Amendment. But voluntary servitude is not. And if we cow to the government and do what it tells us, when we know it lacks the authority to do it, when it interferes with our business judgment as to how to use assets that we've raised to sell a service or a product or a good, we become voluntary slaves to the government. That's the danger. That's where we're heading, Gerald. That's my greatest fear.
Well, I agree with you. You know what I say? All we've become is plantation workers on the global plantation of Slavelandia.
Yes.
And you remember when you and I were...
And this is beautiful because this goes into something, what is his name? It'll come to me. Professor, he taught all over Harvard, Yale, Princeton. Cornell West. And a quote that he made, he said, when he'd address these Edomites, he said, how does it feel that you're going through what we've always gone through? And he called it, he said, now that you've been niggerized, I think I used that in my last video, but it's true. And now that they feel what we felt for centuries, they don't like it. But it's a beautiful thing because this is prophecy, all right? All these prophecies are jumping off the pages of the scriptures, right in front of these people's faces, all right? And you can blame it on these bootleg, set up whorehouses or harlot houses, as the scriptures say they call churches, all right? They were just set up to deceive our people from knowing who they really are, all right?
Young guys, there were things called grocery stores, hardware stores, stationery stores.
Right. Bakeries.
Now they're chains.
Yes.
Because, as you well know, they did away with the Robinson-Patman Act, Sherman Antitrust Act,
In
Clayton
fact,
Antitrust
hold
Act.
on, Salaki. Let me get something real quick. Let's see. Let's see. Nope, that's not it. Let's see. This is what it's about, Akim, and the few Aquath that are listening. Everything is centered around us. This is Zechariah 12. All right. I'll start at the top. This is Zechariah 12 and 1. It says, the burden of the word of the Most High, Yahweh for Israel, saith the Most High, which stretcheth forth the heavens, and layeth the foundation of the earth, and formeth the spirit of man within him. 2. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, for all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. And everybody is against us. Everybody. That's part of the curses. When you go to Deuteronomy 28th chapter, that exclusively describes our people. All right? You may have a few that maybe 3, 4, or 5 of those curses can fit, but all of them only fit our people. That's the so-called Negro, Latino, and so-called Native American. All right? And they know this. So let's go back to the video.
All of them, and they allow the bigs to take over.
Yeah,
Every time I go into one of these stores, my heart breaks when I see these people working there because they have no future.
Right.
I go to a Hannaford's, and I go to
And all the Akim and all the camps, what did they refer their jobs to
you
as?
see the people working there, they have no
They have to
future.
go to the
In old
plantation,
days,
right?
When you work
They're
at the
right.
grocery store, the hardware store, the stationery store, you say to yourself as a young guy, hey, maybe I'm going to learn over here and I'm going to open my own place.
Correct.
No
The
more.
other reason that all this has happened is the Federal Reserve printing cash and devaluing everything that we own. And so you could no longer make a living selling groceries or selling baked goods or selling stationery, and the big guys bought you up for less than you were worth. That's where we are today. This is not a Democrat problem or a Republican problem. This is a big government problem.
Yep.
This is a problem of Leviathan, a government that knows no restraints on itself and wants to tell us how to live. Also a government of cronyism, a government that wants to take care of its patrons, the little guys, and the Constitution be damned.
Yeah, you look at merger and acquisition activity, it's at an all-time high. And because
Yes.
they're getting all this cheap money, and the bigs are getting bigger and buying out everybody.
Correct.
So going back to servitude and slavery, all we are plantation workers of Slavelandia.
Well, it gets even worse. If the Democrats, well, I don't know that this will pass because there's some stable thinkers in the Senate, very few, but enough to block it. The proposal of the House Ways and Means Committee to raise taxes will, for people like you and me that live in New York and New Jersey, have an effective tax rate of north of 60%. Now, if that's not slavery, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and again, you saw what happened under Trump. He gave 82% of his tax breaks went to the 1%.
Correct. My taxes actually went up because they got rid of the deduction on state and local taxes. And in New Jersey, we have the highest state and local taxes in the union. So I have to pay a tax on the tax, which is inconceivable. Could you imagine what Jefferson or Madison would have thought about that?
Yeah, this is you also in your article you wrote, all this can happen only if we let it.
We're letting it happen.
Yeah,
We're
we're letting it happen.
Look,
What can we do to change this?
Well, if the feds go to Walmart and threaten Walmart, 500,000 employees, it's not going to put Walmart out of business. But if the feds go to some business 2 miles from me or 2 miles from you, hardworking person like you are, who happens to have 150 employees, and they start second guessing his business judgment. Well, you can't have that person work. You can't have that person work. It'll have a catastrophic economic effect on the business and a catastrophic personal effect on the individual who can't work. I mean, $14,000 a day per employee. No jury trial. Forget about due process. The Department of Labor will just come and take $14,000 per employee per day after you reveal their private medical information to us out of your bank account. I mean, this is Joe Stalin's dream, that Joe Biden could have this kind of power over private enterprise. Now, why doesn't the government enforce this regulation itself? Well, the Congress would have to authorize it, and there's no will in the Congress for it. And the government would have to pay for this itself. And there's no will in the government, there's no ability in the government to enforce this. So they're trying to get private enterprise to enforce a presidential dictate. It's not even a statute written into law.
And this isn't being talked about as you're speaking about it.
No, it's
not. No one's saying this.
It's not being talked about.
No.
What's being talked about is the death rate, the sickness rate, the effectiveness of the vaccine.
Again,
and
these are all distractions.
As our friend RFK Jr. said at a conference that you and I attended recently, the gross demonization of the unvaccinated. The unvaccinated are heroes because they're basically saying to the government, stop, leave me alone.
Yeah. Again, again, you and it was such an honor to be speaking at Dr. Ron Paul's War on Us event.
It was a great gathering. You brought the house down. Congressman Thomas Massey did. Bobby Kennedy did it. Jeff Dice did. It was a great gathering. There needs to be more gatherings like that. You asked what we can do. People need to learn what their rights are. They need to know when they can say to the government, you shall not cross the threshold of my house or my business or my bank account. And then we need to begin sort of a soft secession. We need government power to stop flowing from local and state to the feds and start flowing from the feds to local and state, or start dissipating. All of government has too much power to regulate our lives. The states are no angels, but at least the states are closer to us, and we have more of an opportunity to influence what the states do. Federal bureaucracy of 3 million people. Donald Trump couldn't tame it. Nobody will tame it.
Yeah, but you talk about the states. Look at the state of New York over here. I can't, we went out to dinner last week, and we had to sit outside. I had to sit outside because I'm not vaccinated.
Correct. Because you exercised a right that the Supreme Court has recognized under the Constitution, we set aside. Turned out to be a lovely venue and a lovely dinner, but that's not the point.
It was a wonderful time. It was great sitting outside. That's one of the good things that happened, by the way.
Right, but the point is, you and I, at that moment in our lives, in the middle of the richest city in the world, two very healthy people did not have the opportunity to exercise free choice, and neither did the restaurateur.
Yeah.
Because if he let us eat inside and didn't check you for your vaccine status, guess what they'll do to him? They'll take his liquor license, and if he can't sell alcohol, he can't pay his rent.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's bigger than federal. It's state as well.
Correct.
And we're losing our freedom. This is my suggestion.
Let me hear it.
How did the Berlin Wall come down?
Berlin Wall came down because people got sick and tired of it. The President of the United States said, tear down that wall, Mr. Gorbachev, and eventually the public ripped it down.
That's right.
Not the government, the public.
The public. The people came out, they stayed, and they didn't leave. More people came.
Right.
They stayed and they didn't leave.
Right.
More people came. They stayed and they didn't leave.
Right.
You can't go on these. I was speaking at one of the rallies, against what de Blasio, Warren Wilhelm Jr. Yeah, really a junior little piece of crap. When he put these mandates on, I was at Columbus Circle, one of the speakers. Only about 2,000 to 3,000 people turned out of 3 million.
I know,
Now,
Gerald, that's a good number for New York City, 2,000 or 3,000.
well, when they have, this is the story and why I think we have to go and not leave. Back in 1982, I'll never forget it. There was a protest rally in
And that's it.
Central Park.
For time's sake, I'm gonna stop it there. Hey, it's coming down to crunch time, Hakim. All right. Like I say, these people, in the words of Dr. Cornel West, have been niggerized. They do not like it. All right, and this is just a small thing. Hey, the downfall of America is beautiful, and I'll end it with this scripture here. It's probably going to be my go-to for, let's see. Well, I got to go and thought I had it loaded, Slovakia. This is going to be Sirach or Ecclesiasticus, chapter 25, verse 7. And it says, there be 9 things which I have judged in mine heart to be happy, and the 10th I will utter with my tongue. A man that hath joy of his children, which you cannot hear. They have drag queens and the alphabet people, LGBT, and everybody else teaching your children. All right, you can't have the joy of your children here on this side. And here's the point. And he that liveth to see the fall of his enemy. And this is a beautiful thing. We're seeing our slave pen essentially being brought down. The whole system around the world. All right. But this American Edomite, this devil, you're right, he is exceptional. He is exceptional in wickedness. And people are seeing him for what he truly is. All right. You go to Daniel 7:25. All right. You know, about him being stouter than all the rest. All right. Daniel 8:25. You know, his policies and everything. This is truly a wicked place. All right. But America has been the military arm of the elites and continue to be so. But we're at the end, and this is a beautiful thing. Hey, so with that, I want to say, Call halal Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashim Kokordash. And once again, double honors go out to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who through the Holy Spirit continue to teach us this truth, wisdom, and knowledge. So with that, shalom, shalom.